Good morning. This is going to cover the 2024 updates for the South Carolina Department of Revenue. It'll include the legislative updates, policy updates, and modernizing e-file updates. We're going to start off with the legislative updates. Any provisos that are mentioned are set to expire June 30th of 2025 unless they are reenacted by the General Assembly in the next legislative session. All right, let's look at income tax. South Carolina's income tax laws will conform to the Internal Revenue Code through December 31st of 2023. This includes effective date provisions. The marginal tax rate has been reduced to 6.2% for 2024. The reduction to 6% is phased in if revenue requirements are met. We have a bracket collapse, so the 6 tax brackets have collapsed to 3 tax brackets. The first bracket is for income levels from 0 to 3,459, and the first bracket has a 0% tax rate. The second tax bracket is for income levels from $3,460 to $17,329. That tax rate is 3% minus $104. The third tax bracket is for income levels of $17,330 and above, and that would be the 6.2% minus $659. All right, income tax withholding provisions that require withholding at 7% rate changed to require withholding at the maximum income tax rate. That includes withholding on prizes or winnings of $500 or more, withholding on rent or royalty payments to non-residents, withholding on distributions by a trust or estate to a non-resident beneficiary, withholding on purchases of real property from a non-resident seller, and withholding on wages paid to an individual who fails to provide a taxpayer identification number or social security number. All right, the South Carolina dependent exemption, that is increased to $4,790 for 2024. That's for each eligible dependent, including qualifying child and qualifying relatives. You'll take that subtraction on line W of the SC 1040, and you'll use that same amount for the dependent under 6 deduction, and you'll take that on line T of the SC 1040. For the volunteer deduction, that increases to $6,000 per tax year. That's for eligible volunteer firefighters, rescue squad members, volunteer members of hazmat response team, reserve police officers, Department of Natural Resources deputy enforcement officers, members of the State Guard, or volunteer state constables. The subsistence allowance has increased to $16 for each regular workday in a tax year, and that applies to federal, state, and local law enforcement officers, full-time firefighters, and full-time emergency medical service personnel. All right, next we're going to look at some tax credits. So we have a new non-refundable credit. That's for the railroad expenditures credit, and that's a credit for 50% of eligible taxpayers' qualified railroad construction or replacement expenditures. The credit limit is the lesser of $5,000 times the number of miles of railroad track owned or leased in South Carolina at the end of the tax year, or $1,500,000. The Department of Commerce issues a tax credit certificate. You'll use TC 66 to claim the credit on the tax return. Any unused credit may be carried forward for up to 5 years, and the repeal date is December 31st of 2028. All right, we also have a new non-refundable credit for recreational trail easement. This is a credit for a taxpayer who encumbers property with perpetual recreational trail easement and right-of-way. The credit equals 10 cents per square foot of property encumbered by the easement. The easement and right-of-way must be held by a South Carolina municipality, county, or special purpose district, or by a Land Trust Alliance accredited land trust, and must be recorded with the Register of Deeds. You'll use TC 67 to claim this credit on your return. Any unused credits can be carried forward up to 5 years, and the repeal date is January 1st of 2029. The classroom teachers' expenses credit has increased to $400. This is a refundable credit that is used taking the I-360, and it's only available for classroom teachers who are not eligible for supplies reimbursement under the budget proviso. For the Industry Partnership Fund credit, the maximum aggregate credit increases to $12 million. The maximum credit in a year for a single taxpayer is $500,000. But if the maximum aggregate amount is not met within 60 days of the opening date for credit application, the single taxpayer maximum amount will increase to $1 million. For more information, you can visit South Carolina Research Authority at scra.org. For the abandoned buildings credit, the maximum credit amount for abandoned building site increases to $700,000. The repeal date is extended to December 31st of 2035. For more information, you can see the South Carolina Information Letter 24-6. For the apprenticeship credit, this increases the credit amount to the greater of $1,000 or cost of apprenticeship. The maximum credit is $4,000 for apprentice or $6,000 for youth apprentice. The apprentice must be employed by the taxpayer for at least 7 months during the tax year. The credit allowed for up to 4 years for an individual apprentice. An additional $1,000 credit is available for up to 3 years if the apprentice remains an employee. Any unused credit may be carried forward up to 3 years. For the headquarters credit, the credit for any taxpayer or business unit establishing or expanding a headquarters facility in the state. Previously, the credit was limited to corporate headquarters. Headquarters must result in the creation of at least 40 new full-time qualifying headquarters-related jobs. The credit equals 20% of qualifying real property costs and 20% of qualifying tangible personal property costs. Any unused credit may be carried forward for up to 10 years. The qualified recycling facility credit. The minimum level of investment for qualifying recycling facility credit is $150 million by the end of the 5th calendar year, after which the taxpayer begins construction or operation. It's amended to include recycling of batteries, solar panels, turbines, and related structures. For the preceptor credit, the repeal date has been extended to January 1st of 2030. The definition of clinical rotation has been amended to add instruction and specialty care. Beginning in 2025 tax year, physician, advanced practice registered nurse, or physician's assistant qualifies for full credit amount of $1,000 if Medicaid participating provider with a minimum of 100 combined Medicaid and Medicare patients or a free clinic. For the job development credit, jobs filled by certain remote workers may count towards the minimum employment levels for the job development credit. For the retraining credit, the credit has been amended to include warehousing and distribution facilities as qualifying businesses. Allow credit for an employee who has been employed for 1 year, and add retraining programs for current employees for the purpose of upskilling, management development, or recertification and production-related competencies to qualify for the credit. Right, next we're going to look at property tax. For the disabled veterans property tax exemption, an eligible veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces who is permanently and totally disabled as a result of a service-connected disability may immediately claim the exemption for the entire year in which the disability occurs. Qualified surviving spouses may immediately claim the exemption for the entire year in the same manner as the veteran. Next is sales and use tax. So the new sales tax exemption for sales of feminine hygiene products became effective May 13th of 2024. The South Carolina Agriculture Tax Exemption Card, or the SCATE card, became effective July 1st of 2022, and they replaced the Agricultural Exemption Certificate. The proviso authorizes the Department of Agriculture to charge up to $24 for a 3-year SCATE card, and it also authorizes the Department of Agriculture to charge $5 for replacement SCATE cards. So the sales tax exemption for farm fuels, the proviso states that chemicals and oils used in an exempt farm machine that are essential for the functioning of the machine are exempt fuels used in farm machinery and farm tractors, and that includes, but not limited to, grease, lubricants, and coolants. For the festival craftsman, the proviso states that a person who makes sales no more than 4 times in the year at a fair, festival, carnival, or event that operates for less than 12 consecutive days is not engaged in business of making sales at retail. It includes artists, a craft person, and hobbyists. It does not apply to anyone engaged in the business of making sales at retail, for which they are required to obtain a retail license. All right, next is the miscellaneous taxes. So golf club dues. No admissions tax is charged or collected on annual or monthly dues paid to a golf club. That became effective May 13th of 2024. And if you would like more information, you can see the South Carolina Revenue Ruling 24-4. For tobacco vending machines, sales of tobacco products are allowed through a vending machine if the vending machine is located in an establishment open only to individuals age 18 or above. It's under continuous control by the owner or license of the premises or their employee. It can only be operated by activation of the owner, license, or employee before each purchase, and is not accessible to the public when the establishment is closed. For the athletics admission tax revenue, this proviso states that admissions tax revenue from admissions to an athletic event of an accredited college or university is remitted to the South Carolina Department of Revenue and then allocated back to the college or university to be used for supporting student athletes through student aid, scholarships, or other financial support. All right, there's a 3% reduction on the interest rate on tax refunds. Proviso 41.2 decreases by 2% of the interest rate for the tax refunds paid during the current fiscal year. The revenue resulting from the 2% reduction must be used for the operation of the state guardians ad litem program. Proviso 117.81 decreases by 1% of the interest rate for tax refunds paid during the current fiscal year. Of the revenue resulting from this 1% reduction, $475,000 must be used by the Senate for operating expenses of the Joint Citizens and Legislative Committee on Children. The remaining revenue must be used by the Department of Juvenile Justice for programs for mentoring or other alternatives to incarceration. The new electronic filing option under penalties of perjury. This proviso states the South Carolina Department of Revenue may require a statement subject to penalties of perjury instead of a statement under oath for the purpose of allowing certain applications for licenses or permits to be filed electronically. So here's my contact slide. My name is Trey Bishop. I am the Tax Law and Process Improvement Training Director here at the Department of Revenue.